Drake called him the self-proclaimed biggest boss, the man who named his private jet Maybach Air, the man who spent 6 months selecting a Gulfstream G550 and then dropped an extra $500,000 just to paint it black and gold with his name written in rose gold letters down the fuselage. Then, on June 10, 2026, he got caught sitting in an airport terminal in Adidas gear, boarding a Frontier Airlines commercial flight. Economy class, like a regular human being. No entourage, no private gate, no Rolls-Royce luggage cart rolling across the tarmac. Just Ross, a gate number, and a seat assignment. And the moment that footage hit the internet, Drake fans lost their entire minds. Because on Drake's brand new album Iceman, which dropped just weeks earlier on May 15, 2026, he literally rapped, "If I'm lying, I'm flying economy. Give me a seat. If I'm lying, I'm flying economy. I bet I know who I see. Let that marinate." Drake wrote that line, pressed it into an album, shipped it to streaming platforms, and within weeks, Rick Ross was photographed doing exactly that. Flying economy on Frontier. Not on his $35 million Gulfstream. Not sipping Luc Belaire at 40,000 feet in a custom leather cabin with Louis Vuitton throw blankets. Frontier Airlines. This is not just internet meme fuel. This is a 2-year beef coming full circle in the most humiliating way possible for one of the participants. And to understand why this moment hits so different, why the entire internet went crazy, why Drake fans are treating this like some kind of prophecy fulfilled, you need to understand the full story. Because this isn't just about a flight. This is about a man who built his entire brand on being richer than you, more powerful than you, more untouchable than you, and the moment the curtain got pulled back. Before we even get to the drama, you have to understand who Rick Ross actually is. Not the rap character, but the real human being behind the brand. Because the whole fraud argument only works if you understand what he sold people. William Leonard Roberts II was born January 28, 1976 in Clarksdale, Mississippi, and grew up in Carroll City, Miami. He attended Miami Carroll City Senior High School, graduated in 1994, went to Albany State University in Georgia on a football scholarship, and studied, of all things, criminal justice. Then in December of 1995, he went to work as a correctional officer at the South Florida Reception Center in Dade County. Florida Department of Corrections personnel records, confirmed with his Social Security number, show he earned $22,913 a year guarding prisoners. He did it for 18 months before resigning in June 1997. Then he became Rick Ross. Named himself after Freeway Ricky Ross, a real Los Angeles cocaine kingpin who had zero connection to this man from Carroll City. He built an entire rap persona around cocaine trafficking, street power, and luxury. Rapped about bricks, Bugattis, and billions. The biggest boss. His whole identity was dripping in the lifestyle of a man who never worked a day job, never punched a clock, never wore a county-issued uniform. And it worked. It absolutely worked. The man built a real empire. Wingstop franchises, real estate, Maybach Music Group, a 109-room mansion in Atlanta worth $9 million, and yes, a $35 million Gulfstream G550. When the smoking gun exposed his correctional officer past in July 2008 with actual personnel records and a photo of William Roberts in his prison guard uniform, Ross denied it. Called the photo a digital hack. Said online hackers put his face on someone else's body. He only admitted it months later in a Don Diva magazine interview, when the denial became untenable. But here's the thing. People mostly forgave him for that. Hip-hop has a long history of forgiving manufactured personas. What they couldn't forgive, what made this beef with Drake so personal and so layered, is that Ross came for Drake's authenticity while building his entire career on a lie. And that irony never went away. It just waited. Now, let's talk about how Drake and Rick Ross even got here. Because for most of the 2000s, these two were one of the most productive collaborative partnerships in hip-hop. Think about what they built together. Aston Martin Music off Ross Teflon Don in 2010. Stay Schemin' in 2012. Drake bodied that record so thoroughly that the bar about wanting to be on Rockefeller before turning into Jay became one of his most quoted lines ever. Lord knows off Take Care. Money in the Grave. Lemon Pepper Freestyle. I'm on one with DJ Khaled. 3 top 10 Billboard Hot 100 hits for Rick Ross, with Drake's cosign directly responsible for that chart success. Drake was the streaming machine. Ross was the OG seal of approval. They elevated each other. There was even talk at one point about a joint album. These were genuine musical brothers. So what cracked it? At the time of the album drop, the bar was decoded as a general diss, maybe aimed at Ross, maybe just general shots at rappers faking their wealth. Nobody had a photograph to attach to it yet. But Drake wrote the line, planted it in the album, and let time do the work. Rick Ross' response to the whole Iceman release was aggressive defiance. He hopped on Instagram stories with a video of himself scrolling through comments, sarcastically yelling bars over and over while mocking anyone who dared defend Drake's lyrics. He called Drake washed. He told his followers to res-hair the cover of his forthcoming album, Set in Stone, because stone lasts forever and ice melts. That was a cold reframe, but it also felt defensive, like a man who felt the shots landing and needed to control the narrative fast. June 10th, 2026. One day before this video, unverified photos, initially believed to be taken somewhere in Asia, start circulating on social media. A man who looks very much like Rick Ross, dressed in Adidas gear, sitting in a public airport terminal among regular travelers, waiting to board what is unmistakably a commercial flight. Not a private terminal, not a VIP lounge, a standard gate, the kind with those uncomfortable chairs bolted together and a CNN screen on a mounted TV. A Twitter account posts it. Fans have spotted Rick Ross in the waiting area taking a commercial flight, and the internet went thermonuclear. Drake fans went immediately to whisper my name. Within minutes, the lyric was everywhere. If I'm lying, I'm flying economy. Quote tweets stacking by the thousands. Meme templates flying. Drake fans treating it like their guy had literally predicted the future. Then confirmations started rolling in through Complex. Ross had been spotted boarding a commercial Frontier Airlines flight. Not a private charter. Frontier, the airline with the budget fares and the animal tails on the planes. Now, here's where the story gets really interesting. Because on the surface, this moment is just funny. Rich guy gets caught flying regular. Huh. But let's connect the dots the way the streets actually connect them. Rick Ross' entire brand is built on luxury as a moral argument. This man has spent 18 years telling you that his wealth validates his voice. That the Gulfstream, the Wingstop franchises, the Star Island property, the custom paint job that cost $500,000, all of it is proof that the biggest boss narrative is real. The same man who was trolling Drake for owning an old Boeing, mocking Drake's private jet as not prestigious enough, is now sitting in the economy section of a Frontier flight. The same man who spent $500,000 on a paint job for his private jet. The same man who jokingly blamed Drake's OVO fighter jet for his G550 crash landing. The same man who wouldn't even play Drake's verse at his Versus because the beef was that serious. He's on a budget airline, and the context nobody wanted to sit with. This is the same Rick Ross who earlier in 2026 went on Apple Music's Rap Life Radio and shifted to a conciliatory tone toward Drake. 1 minute extending an olive branch, next minute calling him washed on Instagram stories, playing both sides of the fence. And now the fence itself caught him slipping. Then there's the deepest layer of all of this. Remember who Rick Ross is at his foundation. William Leonard Roberts. The man who borrowed the identity of a real drug kingpin, built a persona on street credibility he didn't earn, got exposed by the smoking gun with government documents showing he was a prison guard earning less than $23,000 a year, denied it, called the photos fake, and only admitted the truth when lying became impossible. His entire career is built on performing a version of wealth and street authenticity that was always at least partially constructed. So when Drake raps about seeing somebody flying economy, and that person turns out to be the rapper who spent 2 years attacking Drake's image and credibility, there's a poetry to it that hits different. The streets see it. The internet sees it. March 2024, Rick Ross and his then-girlfriend Christina Mackey split. A few weeks later, within that same month, Mackey showed up as a special guest at Drake's It's All a Blur tour. Drake personally invited his former collaborator's ex to his show. Ross saw that, took it personally, and unfollowed Drake on Instagram. Now, in 2024, an unfollow is a declaration of war. Don't let anyone tell you different. These rappers live and die by social media signals. And Drake, who apparently monitors his followers with military precision, noticed immediately. Instead of picking up the phone, he went to the studio. On April 13th, 2024, Push UPS leaked, and Drake went straight at Ross. Direct shots, references to Diddy, Ross' longtime associate. A dark subliminal given what was happening in the culture at that time regarding Diddy's legal situation. Rick Ross did not wait. Within hours of that leak, he was in the studio. By that same evening, DJ Academics was premiering Champagne Moments, Ross' response, live on his stream. The reaction was immediate. Ross called Drake a white boy, a direct shot at Drake's biracial identity. He accused Drake of getting a rhinoplasty. He claimed Drake stole his flow from Lil Wayne. And he released it 2 days later on streaming platforms, becoming the first rapper in the entire Kendrick-Drake war to drop a full video for a diss record. Here's where it gets even more layered. Ross wasn't just beefing with Drake on a personal level. He had already chosen a side in the bigger war. When Future and Metro Boomin dropped We Don't Trust You in March 2024, the album that lit the whole rap civil war on fire with Kendrick's Like That verse, Rick Ross was on that album. His presence alone was a statement. He aligned with the anti-Drake coalition before Drake had even addressed him directly. And once Drake sent shots on push-ups, Ross committed fully. He spent the rest of 2024 trolling Drake relentlessly, calling him a white boy in interviews, joking that Drake's OVO fighter jet had shot down his Gulfstream after his G550 got its landing gear stuck during a hard landing in Dallas in May 2024. That tweet was peak Ross energy. Chaotic, funny, and completely intentional. When Ross performed at his Verzuz against French Montana in early 2026, he took it even further. He performed Aston Martin Music, one of their classic collabs, but told the crowd he was cutting Drake's vocals entirely. Then when Drake's verse came up in the song, Ross grinned while the audience sang it for him. That was a calculated move. A statement. And all of this while Ross was also occasionally telling interviewers he'd be open to squashing things depending on his morning Luke Belair intake, then turning right back around and calling Drake out the very next day. May 15, 2026. Drake drops not one, not two, but 3 albums simultaneously. Iceman, Maid of Honor, and Habibi. His first solo release since For All the Dogs in 2023. His first album since the nuclear war with Kendrick. His comeback. His statement. Make Them Cry from Iceman became the most streamed song in a single day on Spotify in all of 2026. He shattered records again. The numbers confirmed what Drake had been saying all along. The streaming crown hadn't left Toronto. But the fans didn't just care about chart performance. They went hunting, combing through every bar, every syllable, every double entendre, looking for receipts. And they found them everywhere. Shots at Kendrick, Jay-Z, J. Cole, A$AP Rocky, Pusha T, DJ Khaled. But for Rick Ross, Drake came with something surgical on Make Them Pay. 1 bar. I was aiding Ross with streams before Aiden Ross had ever streamed. 9 words of wordplay that said everything. For those who don't know, Aiden Ross is one of the biggest streaming personalities on the internet, known for his Kick live streams. Drake has appeared on Aiden's streams multiple times. So Drake used Aiden Ross' name to construct a double meaning. I was aiding Ross. I was helping Rick Ross, boosting his streams, putting him on charts, before Aiden Ross the streamer even started streaming. Clever, dismissive, and devastating all at once. The message was clear. Everything Rick Ross achieved commercially, Drake's cosign built. When Aiden Ross streamed his live reaction to the album, he lost his mind when the bar dropped. Drake actually FaceTimed him during the stream. It became a whole moment. Then on Whisper My Name, Drake went somewhere else entirely, somewhere that felt almost prophetic in hindsight. If I'm lying, I'm flying economy. Give me a seat. If I'm lying, I'm flying economy. I bet I know who I see. And Rick Ross, to his credit, responded. He hopped back on social media and addressed the viral moment directly. His framing was simple. I chose to fly commercial. It was a rational business decision, not a financial necessity. And honestly, that defense isn't entirely wrong. Ross has even written about this in his book, The Perfect Day to Boss Up. He discussed the economics of private aviation, acknowledging that flying private every single time doesn't always make financial sense. Fuel costs, logistical challenges, international routing. Sometimes commercial just makes more sense. But here's the real tea. That rational argument crumbles when you spent 2 years making private jets the centerpiece of your diss campaign. You can't mock someone's plane, call them financially inferior, and then turn around and say you fly commercial when it makes sense, without the irony being absolutely devastating. You forfeited the right to be practical the moment you made private aviation part of your beef. 50 Cent, who has been trolling Rick Ross for nearly 2 decades with the consistency of a Swiss watch, piled on immediately when the footage went viral. Uncle Murda joined in too. 50 has never missed an opportunity to expose perceived hypocrisies in Ross' image, and this moment was gift-wrapped. Drake, for his part, has remained publicly silent on the specific airport moment, at least as of filming. But he doesn't need to say anything. He already said it on Whisper My Name. The lyric exists. The photo exists. The internet did the rest of the work. This is exactly the kind of slow-burn victory Drake has become known for in this era of his career. He doesn't always respond in real time. Sometimes he just plants a seed in an album, drops it into the culture, and waits. Kendrick made him look defeated in 2024, but Drake came back with 3 albums, historic streaming numbers, and a bar that aged like fine wine within 27 days of the album dropping. And Rick Ross' upcoming album Set in Stone, the one he was hyping as proof that stone lasts longer than ice, now has to come out in this atmosphere. He promised stone lasts forever. But right now the internet is asking, does the biggest boss fly Delta One? Or does he fly Frontier? The Aston Martin music versus moment stung. Champagne moments stung emotionally. But this airport footage tied to a bar on the biggest selling album of 2026 so far is the kind of thing that doesn't go away. It becomes the thumbnail. It becomes the tweet that gets quote retweeted for years. And let's not overlook the fact that this is the same Rick Ross who, when asked about ending the beef on Kershaw Please, said with complete confidence that he ain't losing no sleep over nothing. He positioned himself as unbothered, untouchable, above the drama. The biggest boss doesn't stress. The biggest boss doesn't explain himself. Except now the biggest boss has to explain why he's flying Frontier. And the more he explains, the funnier it gets for the other side. That's the trap. Every response keeps the story alive. Let me break this down at the highest level, because this story is about something much bigger than one viral airport photo. Hip-hop has always had a complicated relationship with the performance of wealth. From the very beginning of rap's commercial era, the hustle narrative, the streets to success, the trap to the top, the bricks to the Bentleys, has been both the genre's greatest strength and its most exploitable fiction. Rick Ross turned that performance into an art form. His whole catalog is a monument to aspirational luxury. Wingstop money turned into Rolls-Royce dreams. And for years, it worked, because the wealth eventually became real enough that the gap between the character and the man closed considerably. But in 2026, the internet has fundamentally changed the cost of that performance. When you mock your enemy's jet, when you show off your custom Gulfstream on Instagram, when you name your plane Maybach Air and spend $500,000 on a paint job, you're writing a contract with the public. The terms are simple. You don't get to quietly board a Frontier flight without someone's camera phone ending the illusion. Drake understood this. Whatever you think about Drizzy and the 2024 Kendrick situation, and let's keep it real, that was not a good look for him at all. Drake has been playing a chess game in the aftermath that most people underestimated. While Rick Ross was out here being the loudest voice in the Drake is over chorus, Drake was in the studio turning every critique into ammunition. The make them pay line about streaming. The Whisper My Name economy line. These weren't random bars. They were receipts. And receipts only become valuable when life cashes the check. In April 2024, when Ross was making the most noise, those bars were just allegations. 2 years later, with Ross caught on Frontier Airlines and Drake's album breaking Spotify records, the narrative has flipped in a way that nobody predicted when Kendrick was performing Not Like Us at the Super Bowl halftime show in February 2025. Does this mean Drake won the overall war? No. Kendrick still won that specific battle. The 2024 Kendrick-Drake situation was one of the most decisive outcomes in rap beef history. But Rick Ross was never the main event in that war. He was a supporting character who chose the wrong side, and then kept talking long after he should have stood down. And now he's paying for it in the court of public opinion. There's also the deeper question about image in hip-hop. When 50 Cent exposed Ross as a former correctional officer back in 2008, the culture debated whether authenticity still mattered. Ross survived it because the music was good and the wealth eventually became undeniable. But this airport moment opens a different kind of wound. Not was he ever street, but is the boss lifestyle real, or is it content? Because in 2026, there is no difference between your brand and your life. What you perform online is your identity. Rick Ross built the biggest boss character on the idea that he operates above the normal rules of wealth performance, that his success is so thorough he never has to compromise. That's the whole point of naming your jet Maybach Air and spending $500,000 on paint. But Frontier Airlines doesn't care about your brand story. Frontier just needs your ticket. Drake laid a trap in an album bar, didn't say another word about it, and life walked Rick Ross directly into that trap 27 days later. The conversation about whether Set in Stone can change the narrative is real. Ross is a talented executive and rapper, and Stone may well outlast Ice in the long game of music legacy. But in the short game of Twitter, in the court of hip-hop opinion where perception is everything right now, the Maybach Air is grounded, and Ross is in seat 23B. The internet doesn't forget. The culture doesn't forget. And Drake's catalog sure as hell isn't going to let you forget. So the question isn't whether Rick Ross is rich. He probably still is. The question is whether the biggest boss persona, the bedrock identity he's defended against 50 Cent, against Freeway Ricky Ross lawyers, against the correctional officer exposure, can survive its most absurd indignity yet. Not a court case. Not a battle rap loss. Just a Frontier Airlines boarding pass and a Drake lyric that aged in real time. Let me know in the comments. Is this the end of the biggest boss era? Or does Ross come back on Set in Stone and flip the whole narrative? And for real, do you think Drake knew? Do you think Drizzy had intel that Ross Gulfstream was grounded and planted that line on purpose? Because the timing is genuinely insane. 27 days between the album and the photo. Some things you just can't make up. Drop your thoughts below, and if this breakdown hit, like the video and subscribe. Because this story is far from over.